Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Episode 56 of Blake&VishSports. Sports. We are a little delayed today, but we are back. And again, not on a Friday, conflicting schedules. So we're doing it on a Saturday during some of the games. So Texas, Oklahoma's on right now, which is a big game. Iowa, Penn State's later. That's going to be awesome. A bunch of other games. And then obviously, we're going to be talking NFL today. So not Trey Lance for whatever reason, unfortunately, not Jimmy Garoppolo, but some Seahawks and other stuff with Vish. How are you doing? Are you excited for tomorrow to see Trey Lance get his first start for the
Yeah,
Niners?
excuse me. I am pretty excited to see Trey Lance's first start. I'm excited to see all the rookie quarterbacks, to be honest with you. But I'm hoping the Niners can pull off a win. I know that I got a little um, feeling about the Packers game. The Bengals. I don't think it's gonna be the
Mm,
kind of game that Green Bay wins by a couple touchdowns. I think the Bengals defense can give them some trouble. So I'm excited to see that one. And then I know that you're real hyped for the afternoon Iowa Penn State game. The
yeah.
Iowa Hawkeyes, I mean, this could be the game that knocks them out of the top 10, maybe probably the top five. I'm feeling a Penn State Nittany Lions win today.
I don't know about all that. I think this will be a big game though, because if one of these two teams win, they have a good chance of making it to the Big Ten championship game, and then they'll probably play Ohio State or something like that, because Ohio State always makes it. But this could be Big Ten. A Big Ten team could make the Final Four, the college football playoffs for the first time, and it seems like a while. Besides Penn State, because Penn State makes it every year, or Ohio State. Sorry, Ohio State makes it every year.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
just we can
yeah.
get into it now. So recently on this Thursday night game, Russell Wilson, big injury, right? I want to say it was his tendon in his middle finger that was wrong. It was dislocated as well. People were thinking he could come back in and play, but we saw Geno Smith. He came out and looked really good. We hadn't seen him play in forever, it seemed like, and he looked really, really good. But Russell Wilson's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, and this is huge, right? He's been an Iron Man. He's pretty much played every game for the last, it seems like, decade, and now he's going to miss half the season pretty much. So this kind of begs the question, could this be his last season here? We know this offseason there was a list of teams he said he would like to get traded to, or if he were to get traded, where he would go, which is just weird because then he came out and contradicted that by saying, "Oh, I don't want to leave, but if I were to leave, here's where I want to go." There was contract disputes, all of that. So Vish, do you think this will be his last season with the Seahawks?
Yes, I do.
Mm,
I think this is the end. I don't think Seattle really has the assets to put together a much better roster than what they currently have. I mean, their starting corners are DJ Reed and Sidney Jones. DJ Reed, who was cut by the Niners, Sidney Jones, who's been cut by multiple teams since he was drafted coming out of Washington. Um, they obviously don't have draft picks because of the Jamal Adams trade. Jamal Adams got a big deal this offseason. A lot of their core players are aging outside of Adams. Russell Wilson is not that young. He came into the NFL when he was 24, I think, and he's in his mid 30s or early 30s now. Early to mid 30s. Dwayne Brown is obviously old. Bobby Wagner is getting up there. I mean, 12 years, or excuse me, I think 2022 will be his 10th year. 10 years for a linebacker. I don't know if he can continue at this level. And then, of course, Quandre Diggs is also a veteran player. So you just go down the list. A lot of their core players are aging. They don't have a lot of money in terms of assets. They don't have draft capital. Uh, I don't see Seattle getting much better. And I think that we've reached a point where the Seattle scheme defense playing the match cover three, which is what they like to do, I think it's reached its point where the league has completely caught on to it. I don't think that front troubles people. I don't think their back end troubles people, even though they got two really good safeties in Diggs and uh Adams. I think the one thing with Seattle they've had the consistent is Russell Wilson, and this year I think even though he's playing at an incredibly high level, I feel like he's not controlling the game the same way he's controlled it in the past, and I think a lot of that is because Seattle's not controlling the game with their offense. Like everybody, we talked about this last year. Everybody hates to let Russ cook because it feels like an old outdated system to run the football so much with Chris Carson, but that allowed Seattle to dictate game flow, and it allowed them to dictate and control the ball and play with control the pace of the game, which ultimately protected their defense and gave Russell Wilson an opportunity at the end of every game. And he's Russell Wilson, one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. He's always going to get the job done, and he always has gotten the job done. We're seeing at times that being a quick strike offense that scores fast, it puts a little bit more pressure, and it really exposes their historically bad defense. And then the last thing I wanted to add, obviously, I when I was talking about their core players, and Jamal just brought him up in the comments, is I missed, of course, DK Metcalf, one of the best receivers in the NFL, and Tyler Lockett was also fantastic. There's also Metcalf's. They're going to have to pay Metcalf this offseason. He's gonna have a big ask. I don't know how they're gonna fit all of that in. I think that Russell Wilson ultimately does end up seeking the trade that we thought he was going to seek last offseason. And maybe I'm just praying for it as a Niners fan, because Russell Wilson, just too many bad memories. That guy's way too good. But I think this offseason he seeks his trade and he ends up playing somewhere else. And uh, Pittsburgh looks like the spot to me. We talked about Rodgers with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson for Pittsburgh is also a really, really nice spot for him, because you have, Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, excuse me, who are both fantastic. Maybe Juju comes back, and you have that terrific defense with that menacing front.
Yeah, and I think it'd be perfect because they also don't have a good O line, and I feel like Russell Wilson just can only operate with a bad O line in front of him, right? That seems to be his whole career, besides when he was on his rookie contract and their team was loaded. Um, I'm with you on the Russell Wilson aspect of it. Like, I could see why he would want to trade. This team's not getting any better. They don't have their first round pick, which is going to be a top 10 pick at this point, it looks like, or at least, it doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs. Um, I just don't get it from the Seahawks side, though. Do they think they could retool their roster by trading him? Or do you think they should go on a full rebuild? Or do you think they should just kind of ride it out with Russell Wilson? Because I could see both of those being the options. I don't think they will be able to put a Super Bowl caliber team together, just how their roster's constructed. I mean, all their good guys, besides really Metcalf, are on their second contract or getting up there in age. I think this would be a good time to tear it down. Maybe get rid of Carroll. He's been there for a long time, and I know he's had success over the years, and I think some of that's tied to Russell Wilson being there for so long. But if there was a time to kind of just for them to go in a full rebuild, just get as much as you can for Russell Wilson, get as much as you can for maybe DK. I'd probably keep him though because he is so good and so young. But
Dwayne Brown, maybe.
yeah, Dwayne Brown, maybe I don't even know if Jamal Adams would trade,
Diggs.
but yeah, Diggs. See what you can get for some of these cornerstone guys and start the rebuild. Now, not all teams want to do that because it's really hard to kind of put that on like your ownership to just tank for a few years and be really bad. But I don't think if Russ comes back next year and finishes his contract, which he has a couple more years on, I think there's no way they compete and actually ever make it to the conference finals or championship games. So I think this would be a good time to rebuild. But the issue is like they don't even have their first this year, which really kind of puts a damper in things. Do they trade Russ at the end of the year? They'll still have a big cap hit. Dead cap's 26 million after this year and then 13 million the next. So that's a lot. I think they're just in a sticky situation on should they just completely tear it down. I'd go that route, but there is an argument to be made for them to kind of, see what they can do with Russ for the next couple of years. It's just tough when their roster's so reliant on him pretty much being just the guy that is the ultimate band-aid for a roster that really this past decade or past half decade, I don't feel like has really been comparable to the other top teams.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think you covered a lot of things that's important. Like, Seattle's best benefit is honestly to do whatever Russell Wilson wants. If Russell Wilson wants to stay, then just do whatever you can to make this roster
Mhm.
better and go all in with Russell Wilson, because you have one of those quarterbacks in the NFL, and there's not that many of them, but the kind of guys that you feel like you have a chance every single year to win a Super Bowl with. I think their biggest issue, and Russell Wilson's contract is also a little bit of an issue with this, because they have to pay him so much money. It's
Mhm.
very difficult to build a great roster when you have a lot of highly paid players. But Their issue to me is that they have another quarterback in this division who's looking like he's gonna be one of those type guys that Russell Wilson's been. And right now he's still on his rookie deal, and he's still got 2 more years on his rookie deal, which allows Arizona to, really stack it up because Kyler Murray's really special. I said last week on our show, I think Kyler Murray's the best quarterback in the NFC West. And I'm sticking with that. And it's not because Russell Wilson still isn't special. It's just Kyler Murray has more juice right now. Russell Wilson doesn't have that same athleticism today that Kyler Murray has. And so I think that gives Seattle a little bit of trouble. And then you talked about the rebuild, right? I mean, it's not ideal. It's not what any team wants to do. But the only way Seattle, sans Russell Wilson, is going to be able to put together a Super Bowl caliber roster is if they um, just tear it up. They get whatever assets they can, they reaccumulate assets, they clear cap space, and they build anew. Now the chances of doing that and building a roster that competes every single year the way they have with Russell Wilson, it's
Mm,
still unlikely because you're
mhm,
probably not going to find a quarterback like Russell Wilson. And sustained success in the NFL is all about if you have a special quarterback. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to find one. But I think that Seattle has reached a point where I think there's only so much they can do. What else can they do to this roster? I mean, the best thing they can do to honestly make their team better is reaccumulate their draft picks and just start drafting and hope every single draft pick is hitting like DK Metcalf. But the chances of that and the odds of doing that are very slim because it's very hard to hit draft picks in general, which is why Seattle has over the last few years drafted guys like an LJ Collier that hasn't worked out. And so, because of all those reasons, to me, it's a no-brainer where this thing is kind of coming to a close. And Russell Wilson, it makes the most sense to me for him to go to his next team. And I think Seattle does have the opportunity to then rebuild it and be as good, but it's just going to be hard.
And I was gonna touch on this too. Like you mentioned that they're drafting. I think John Schneider, the GM, he should be on the hot seat right now. Dating back to 2016, here's some of their first couple round picks: Jermaine Ifedi, Jaron Reed, he was pretty solid. Malik McDowell, Rashad Penny, LJ Collier, Marquise Blair, DK Metcalf was a hit. Jordan Brooks, Darrell Taylor, and then this year they took Dwayne Eskridge. These early round picks have just been misses for pretty much the most part, and they haven't really been getting much in the end of rounds either. So their drafting hasn't been good really at all. They've got a few guys in there, which I mean, I think law of averages, like you're gonna hit on a couple of them right at some point. Uh, but yeah, just generally speaking, they've drafted terribly. They really like the way they've acquired players is just from those earlier drafts in the early 2010s. Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, like those are their two keystone guys, and they've just had them forever. But
And
they
I have a
really drafted poorly.
So I have actually a theory also with why they drafted so well in 2010, 2011, and 2012. Those
Mhm,
were the three drafts that built this entire Seattle dynasty, basically, because they picked Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner. They picked all of them in those
mhm,
drafts. I have a theory, and it's similar to so Jimmy Johnson had a lot of success drafting early in his Cowboys career because he came from college football and he recruited all those players, so he knew all of them kind of in and out, and he knew which ones were really good, which ones were really bad, and he was able to just draft them, and get them on his NFL roster, and then they drafted really well. I think that the Seahawks drafting really well in 2010 to 2012, like you said with John Schneider, it's more of a case of Pete Carroll than it is John Schneider. Pete Carroll just came
mhm,
from college football. All those guys would have been guys he's recruited, especially like the guys in the West
mhm,
Coast, like a Richard Sherman. I mean, they did. Bobby Wagner went to Utah State, I think, so he's another guy that was from the West Coast. And so Pete Carroll would have known all those guys. He's recruited all those guys. And to me, that it was just a case of Pete Carroll knowing all of that and being able to draft those guys because he knew them
mhm,
in and out. Than it was like John Schneider being this incredible scout and just going over down and just finding diamonds in the rough. And then, of course, the brilliance in drafting Russell Wilson, that everybody deserves credit for that. But I'm with you. Like, at some point, like I understand Seattle doesn't have a lot of draft picks, so it increases their margin. Like they have a high margin for error. They don't have a high
yeah,
margin for error, excuse me, because they don't have picks. But at some point, to me, I think that Seattle needs to just tear it up, and I think tearing it up might include you know Pete Carroll's going and John Schneider going, and I guess I called it a dynasty. Excuse me, I didn't mean a dynasty. I just meant an extended period of success in their run.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was looked at as kind of the beginnings of a dynasty potentially.
It was
It could have been otherwise if they would have won that second ring in 2014, but
right.
that is beside the point. So yeah, that's Russell Wilson. Really, is this his last season? I think we're both kind of on the boat. Either they just try to go all in, or just start fire sale on the whole team and just kind of build from the ground up there. Maybe get rid of Carroll, maybe get rid of the GM. Who knows? But that kind of leads us into the other point, which we kind of touched on this a little bit. We can run through it though. And what does that mean? What does Russell Wilson's injury mean for this year? So 6 to 8 weeks. I thought Geno Smith looked really good. I mean, we haven't really seen him play in forever, it seems like, but he looked pretty good. But can he keep that up, especially with the generally speaking subpar roster that's been getting aided by Russell Wilson a lot over the years? Do you think they have a chance at getting anything done? Can if Russ comes back, can they make a late season push?
Maybe, but to me, they would have to remain around 500. And Russell
Mhm,
Wilson then maybe comes back and wins like 4 games or 5 games at the end of the season because he's 6 to 8 weeks. So let's assume he's going to miss 6 games, right? They're 2-2 right now, which is solid, 500. If they can be, 6-6, or excuse me, if they can be 5-5 when Russell Wilson comes back, um, they got a real shot to me then. But I don't think they can do that. They have a tougher schedule. I mean, you look across the board right now of who they have to play. It's not ideal. Excuse me, Seattle's 2-3. I forgot they played Thursday, but you
yeah,
got to play Pittsburgh. That defense will be tough for Geno Smith. The Saints, that front's going to give Geno Smith trouble. Jacksonville, they could probably win that game. They can't beat Green Bay. I don't think they can beat Arizona. Those are their next 5 games, and then they got Washington. To me, that's 1-4 right there. And it's a case of like, sure, their offense is really explosive, but I know Geno Smith looked really shockingly very decent on Thursday night, but I don't know how he's gonna look when teams are game planning for Geno Smith. Their
mhm,
offense, it's okay. Shane Waldron, it's like a version of what McVay does. It's very close actually to what McVay does, but to me, it doesn't have all the answers where you can take Geno Smith and you can win against good teams with Geno Smith at quarterback. Their defense is not good. It's really the worst defense in the NFL. One of the most frustrating things for me as a Niners fan watching the Niners Seattle game was that uh, I walked away from that game thinking, wow, Seattle's defense is terrible. Seattle's roster and team isn't all that good, and they still go to Santa Clara and beat the 49ers in Santa Clara. Like how do you like that was really frustrating as a fan. But going back, I just don't see them going very far. To me, it's DONE. Like I without Russell Wilson, I don't know what this team can do. If they do run the ball well, that's one positive. Chris Carson's a beast. I thought he was missed on Thursday night. He's one of the best. He's a top 10 running back, top 12 running back in the NFL, in my opinion. He's that good. I don't think he gets enough credit for it, but other than that, I don't see what this team does well outside of Russell Wilson, uh, besides maybe running the ball. They're not good defensively. They don't rush the passer well. They don't play coverage well. They're not overly creative on defense, playing Seattle scheme cover three almost every snap, and they're not fantastic on and anything on offense. I mean, Metcalf and Lockett are special, but Metcalf and Lockett with Geno Smith will be not the same.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, just looking at their schedule here, the next 6 games, like the only three they could maybe win: Jaguars, that's reasonable. Steelers, maybe. Saints, maybe. Washington, maybe. But the only one I'd feel confident in saying they could win is the Jaguars. And even then, I don't have that much confidence in them because, as you mentioned, their defense just they don't really have a pass rush. Their cornerback position doesn't have much talent there. You're really just banking on Bobby Wagner, Diggs, and Jamal Adams to kind of do it all. And Jamal Adams in coverage hasn't really been great at all. And I think that kind of got highlighted again on Thursday Night Football. So I don't know what they're planning on doing with him or this defense in general. But yeah, it's really not that great. And as much as good as Metcalf, Lockett, and Chris Carson are, you still have been relying on Russell Wilson for the past decade to just turn his magic on in the fourth and bring it home. So I don't think they'll be, and they have the NFC West. So all those reasons, I don't think they'll be able to even push for a playoff spot by the time Russ is back. And here's my question: do they even want Russ to come back? Because if they lose, say, if they're 1-5 or they go 1-5 in the next 6 weeks, do they want to put Russell Wilson in a position where he has to come back, even though there's a very, very low likelihood that they can actually make the playoffs? The season could be over at that point.
They
Wouldn't they
do, right?
wouldn't they rather just try to like preserve his health and his trade value and maybe either run it back or trade him? I don't see the point of even bringing him back if they can't make the playoffs. What are you
So
playing for at that point?
So I think that's a really, really interesting point. The one thing I will say is if you're Seattle, you're already all in on this season. You've been all in on this season, and the
Yeah.
Jets have your first round pick. To me, no matter what, you can't uh throw the towel and put up the white flag and say we'll go for next season or we're gonna preserve Russ's health. Like you gotta send it, and that's just a difficult spot to be in. All around if you're Seattle, honestly, because even losing this week, right? Let's say they lost to the Rams on Thursday. Let's say they lost and Russell Wilson was not hurt, right? At 2-3, we would still think Seattle's got a shot, right? And through 5 weeks, they have not looked like a playoff team on either side of the ball. Excuse me. They have Russell Wilson, Metcalf, and Lockett, which is really special, but their defense is terrible. But we would still say Seattle's got as good a shot as anybody in terms of being able to get
Mhm.
one of those wild card spots, or maybe they still even have a shot at the division because they have that special quarterback in Russell Wilson. But now here we are, and he's hurt, and he's gone 6 to 8 weeks. To me, I don't. Again, what does Seattle do well outside of run the ball with Chris Carson, and then of course Russell Wilson being special with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett?
Yeah, not much. Not much. But the point, I think the outlying point is that if it's a lost season, do you just cut your losses at that point? What if you bring Russ back, you try to rush him back, or he comes back and he's like, "Oh, I can play," and then he gets injured and he just tanks his value even more, and it's lingering and stuff like that. And this is also, I want to say, it's on his throwing hand too, which is
Middle finger
also
on his
just
throwing hand.
even more cause for concern. Because there's been guys like, I know Baker has a labrum issue, but that's his non-throwing. It still affects throwing motion, all that. But if it's your throwing arm, I feel like you want to take extra precaution with that. Just an idea. I know it kind of is tough that they don't have their first round pick because if they did, they could be like, oh, we can go from maybe the 10th pick to like the fourth pick or something like that, but just by holding Russell Wilson out. But yeah, I mean, now they're just boosting their stock for their second rounder, which doesn't really mean anything. So yeah, this is a just a tough spot for the Seahawks. I know we both kind of had them in our playoffs, but it's just looking less and less like that as each week goes on, especially with Russell Wilson out for the
So let me ask you one more thing before we move on. The
sure.
one thing about Seattle, excuse me, I'll add is that so to me, through 4 weeks, we're in week 5. Seattle and Rams have played their week 5 game already. In the if I look at the NFC, to me, Tampa's a playoff team for sure. Green Bay's a playoff team for sure. Rams are a playoff team for sure. Arizona's a playoff team for sure, and Dallas is a playoff team for sure. Those are the 5 that I feel confident that week 17 comes and those 5 teams will be in the playoffs. That leaves 2 spots. And right now, to me, the biggest contenders for those 2 spots are, I think Carolina's got a good shot. I think San Francisco's got a shot. I think that Seattle was one of those teams in the
Yeah.
picture. Now I don't think they're there, but I think New Orleans has a shot. I think Minnesota has a shot. So that's 4 teams right there. And then you can go down the list and make an argument for a couple other teams too if things break right. Like, just
Very
other maybe
crazy.
another team in the NFC East and stuff like that. So I just look at that and I say the NFC has basically 2 available playoff spots in my opinion. Of course, bearing injury and changes of other things, but uh, there's 2 available playoff spots, and Seattle to me is on the outside looking in of 4 or 5 teams that to me are big time contenders for those 2 spots as well. So that's where I just how far can they go? I don't see
Not
this as
far.
a good situation for Seattle.
No, it's gonna be rough for this season for them. And then depending how this offseason goes, we don't know if Russ is gonna be there. Maybe he'll ask out again or say, "Hey, I don't want to leave, but here's like 5 teams I would love to be traded to." As he
But
did
it was
last
all
season.
he never asked that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So that's that's kind of how far we think the Seahawks can go without Russ. And then just wanted to put this up here. Thank you for the donation, Scott. And he says Seattle's good drafts are when Scott McLaughlin was there.
McLuhan, yeah.
So yeah, we kind of pointed out like John Schneider the last 5 years has been missing a lot early round, and they've got a few guys in the end round, but that'll happen. Just as we mentioned, it has to pretty much. And then Rob donated, didn't say anything, but thank you for the donation, Rob. If you want to ask something, we'd be happy to answer any questions, or put whatever you have up there. And that's kind of all that we really had planned for today. But we did want to answer just some general questions about things that you guys wanted to ask us. We haven't really been able to do this for a little bit, so we just wanted to put it up here. And it's Saturday, so maybe stuff about tomorrow's games, predictions for Trey Lance, is Jimmy Garoppolo questions, George Kittle liking posts about Kyler Murray being better than Trey Lance. I don't know. What did you think about that, Vish? Did you think that was real? I know people were talking about that being fake.
I don't think it matters. He
It
liked a
does.
post of Marcus Golden saying Trey Lance ain't Russell Wilson, or Trey Lance ain't Kyler Murray,
Yeah,
excuse me. And who cares?
I think it's kind of saying something because at least from what I've gathered, George Kittle's he's on the Garoppolo side of the locker room, and he wants Garoppolo. This is all from Niners Twitter and reading what Grant has to say. So it could be that he's just lying or just embellishing, but that Kittle is kind of on Garoppolo's side of the locker room, and it's interesting that they're both injured this week. People have been saying that. I don't know. I don't know. But Noble Bulls, thank you for the donation. Noble says now the helmet rule has changed. What throwbacks are guys most excited to see next year? Throwback
Ooh,
jerseys, you're saying? I'm
yeah.
thinking that, yeah. I have two off the top of my head. One, those Seahawks green ones, not like the color rush green, like the
Oh, with the
Thursday
gray
night
helmet?
ones, where it's green and then blue pants. I think those ones are really cool. Um,
With the gray helmet?
I don't think no, I think we're thinking of different ones.
Okay.
Not like the older time ones. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah,
I personally used to love the old throwback Green Bay jerseys, the ones that they used to wear in like 2011, 2012, like the really, really old throwbacks.
it's like a blue helmet. It's called like Action Green. I don't know. I think those are awesome. And then uh I think the Bears orange jerseys are cool too. I
Yes.
don't like the Bears, but I think those jerseys are pretty cool. Um what about the Buccaneers creamsicle ones?
No, I'm not a big fan of those. But do you know which Green Bay one I'm talking about? The dark navy blue with the gold
Yeah, it's
pants and the
navy.
brown helmet?
Yeah, I know what those ones are. I don't
Yeah,
also
those are sweet.
those are just like weird because the helmet. I just don't like the helmet's like a brown.
Really. I always liked that uniform. Um, Speaking of the Lions, I actually was a real excuse me, a big fan of the Lions uh jerseys back in the day. Like they had a black alternate, and this was back when John Kitna was the quarterback, when Roy Williams used to play for the Lions. They had a black alternate that was like black and the number was blue. I always thought that one was really, really I thought it was a tight fit. I thought it was a like good looking uniform. I thought it was cool.
The Eagles ones with the green helmet, like the lighter green helmet, and it's a different Eagles logo. That one is cool. The Broncos, orange jerseys. Um,
The Niners wore the 94 throwbacks, in my opinion, they should just be the uniforms, but those are always sweet to me.
oh, and then two of my other favorites, the Cowboys one where it's like the star logo, but
Oh.
it's blue and then it's like white shoulder pads, and then the Bumblebee Steelers jerseys.
I was thinking of bringing up Bumblebee Steelers, but then I refrained. But I'm with you on the Dallas. I think Dallas is another team where their 94 uniforms are just way better than the uniforms they have now. Like I think 100% Dallas should um
Oh,
uh get those.
Chargers, the blue ones. It's like
Yeah.
not even the navy ones. It's like the powder blue.
Oh yeah. That one's sweet. That one is sweet.
Yeah.
Honestly, when we were little, Chargers had by far the best uniforms in the
Yeah,
NFL. Let's be
easily.
honest. Yeah. I mean, who didn't have a LaDainian Tomlinson powdered blue jersey?
Yeah, LaDainian Tomlinson powder blue. Nothing gets much better than that. All right, we can get into some other actual questions that aren't.
My man Rob, asked this question. So he said, "How do you rank Green Bay against the Cardinals and Dallas?"
Mm, I think they're pretty comparable to Dallas. I think them and Dallas are very comparable situations. It's more of a high-powered offense. Obviously, you have Dak and Rodgers are really good quarterbacks. The receiving cores. I mean, the Cowboys are a little better, and then the Cowboys have a little better running backs too. But I'd say LaFleur is a much better coach than McCarthy offensive wise. So that kind of balances out the talent differentiation. And then once the Packers get their O linemen back, because they're all seemingly injured right now, their O line will be dominant, I think. And the Cowboys O line's been pretty good. They do have a weak link at center, but uh, I think the offenses are comparable. And then the defenses have both been. I think the Cowboys has been a really pleasant surprise. So thus far, especially Diggs being as good as he's been. And then the Packers defense has been really inconsistent. Obviously, 38 points week one, and then against the Niners, and then who did they play last week? Against the Steelers, they were okay, but those are against quarterbacks that were struggling. So, what will they do against a Dak Prescott? I don't know, but I think the Cowboys and the Packers are pretty comparable, and then Cardinals maybe a step above, maybe around them. I'd say the Cardinals may be the best team thus far, but I think at the end of the season, the Cardinals and I think the Packers could be ahead of the Cardinals, honestly, by the end of the season.
So I'm really intrigued by this question because all three teams are kind of similar in different ways to me. All three have pretty much unstoppable offenses, especially when they're on. Like Kellen Moore, even though McCarthy is not the best, Kellen Moore has been scheming it up for the Cowboys this year, and their offense is obviously unstoppable. They run the ball really well. That's been shocking to me. Zeke Elliott looks very good this
He
season.
does.
I can't believe he turned back the clock like that. Dak Prescott's obviously an amazing quarterback. He's so smart. He always knows where to go with the ball. He manages a pocket so well. He's so accurate. Two great receivers and Lamb and Amari Cooper, and then they'll get Gallup back, and Cedric Wilson's looked pretty good.
Yep.
And Blake Jarwin, Dalton Schultz are kind of sneaky, underrated contributors for their offense, or especially Dalton Schultz. Excuse me. I think Jarwin might be hurt if I'm not mistaken, but to me, he
He's been
also is a
solid.
contributor when healthy. But um, I think the big and they all have to me opportunistic defenses too, in the sense that like it's not that they have like this unstoppable like 2015 Broncos type defense, but they have solid defensive coaches, good schemes. They have Joe Barry isn't the most aggressive, but Dan Quinn has been more aggressive this season, and Vance Joseph is very aggressive. So, somewhat dissimilar defensive play callers, but the idea with their defense is that they force turnovers. All three of them, they're opportunistic in that sense. But the reason I give Arizona the edge, because to me, the offense it's kind of a moot conversation because all three kind of even themselves out, is I just think Arizona has the most premium players on their defensive side of the ball.
Mm.
Maybe Dallas might have that. I mean, Micah Parsons, we might be sitting here by the end of the season and saying, wow, Micah Parsons Diggs on the same defense isn't fair. But right now, when I look at Arizona, the reason I have them a cut above is just I believe in Buda Baker, JJ Watt, Chandler Jones, those guys that just make plays, when a game is on the line and you're in this offensive battle, you need one defensive play to steal a possession back or something. And I'd probably rank Arizona just a hair above those two right now, just because I think Arizona does have those players who will steal the possession back. But overall, to me, they're all actually very similar in a lot of ways. And I think they're three of the best teams in the NFC. There's no doubt about it.
And I think the only difference, just generally speaking, is the Cardinals with Kyler haven't been in a playoff situation. They are lacking in experience in that kind of way. We know Dak has gone to the playoffs a couple of times. He's won a series. He's lost a series. He lost to the Packers, but he did beat a couple teams. I want to say he beat the Seahawks in 2018, maybe
Yeah.
2017, some one of those times. But he has won a playoff game, and then obviously the Packers just go to the NFC Championship game and lose. But the Cardinals haven't been there with Kyler, and I mean, it's not to say that Kyler's not a playoff quarterback. We just haven't seen it, but you don't know. They haven't been quote unquote battle tested, I guess you could say is the term. And the fact that they've been playing in December, late in December and January. So I'm interested to see how they do in that situation, as we just haven't seen it yet.
That's fair. That is a real question mark, but I think this was a really great question because
Hmm.
I actually once he asked that question, I actually realized like, wow, even though their rosters aren't exactly similar schematically, they're not similar. When you look at the fact that it's a really high-powered offense and then it's kind of a middling but opportunistic defense on all three teams, it's actually similar from that standpoint. And then we're talking about three of the top six or seven or eight best quarterbacks in the NFL. So it's pretty unbelievable that way. I do think that Eric Cardinals and Dallas have a lot more firepower on their offense in terms of explosive elements. I think Green Bay, it's really Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, but then that's where Rodgers is so great. We're talking about Kyler Murray and Dak, two guys that both of us probably have in the top seven or eight quarterbacks in the league, and we're putting the Packers right with them because first they have a really good scheme with LaFleur, obviously a sound scheme, and then Rodgers is just so precise and so unbelievable that he's just amazing like that.
Hmm. Definitely. But that is a great question. Um, so I thought this one was a good one too. Amin the Dream, go check out his channel. He does some Niners and general NFL stuff as well. He asks, who do you think will play better this Sunday, Justin Fields or Trey Lance? So Trey Lance is going to be playing the Arizona Cardinals. Justin Fields and the Bears are playing the Raiders. This is Fields' second start, or no, third start, and then Lance's first start. But Vish, do you have any initial thoughts off the head of what you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I think play better. It's a little bit of a vague term because play better doesn't exactly mean which guy has the better stats. We've seen quarterback. I mean, anybody who's watched the 49ers over the last 4 years knows how much Kyle Shanahan can manufacture quarterback stats. Just ask Nick Mullins, and the fact that he's in the conversation with Andrew Luck and Patrick Mahomes in terms of passing yards in your first 15 starts. That's wild, but that's the Shanahan effect and his ability to manufacture yards and create opportunities for his quarterback. I was really impressed with what I saw from Justin Fields last week. He obviously had a very rough first start versus Cleveland, but hey, we talked about it on Monday when Bill Lazor calls plays. Good things happen for this offense, and he does a good job of protecting and managing his quarterback and putting him in the right type of situations. Um, I think the thing for Trey Lance is going to be. I think Kyle Shanahan will also put him in a similar situation. I think Fields has a better opportunity to succeed just because I think that Arizona's front is capable of wrecking the game for Trey Lance. I mean, Shanahan can protect and scheme up, but at the end of the day, I look at JJ Watt against the right side of the 49ers offensive line, and I look at him against McGlinchey. I look at him against Brunskill and I look at him against Alex Mack, wherever he lines up, whether he lines up as a 1 technique, 3 technique, 5 technique, I think that's a big disadvantage for the Niners across the board. And I think one of the most underrated things about this season is that J.J. Watt is still one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He is so good. He's a game wrecker. And so I think that's a bit of an issue. The Niners receivers haven't very much impressed me, to be honest, this season. So even though Byron Murphy's out and Marco Wilson's going to be a game time decision, I don't know how much the Niners are going to challenge outside the numbers and really make these corners pay, especially given that Trey Lance isn't the most refined drop back passer, and dropping him back means that he has to also drop back against that pass rush, which is difficult. And then the Niners don't have dudes that just line up on the outside and go win like CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper and all of that, at least not right now. Debo's the one guy, but Brandon Ayuk's been a little bit inconsistent so far this year. I mean, 6 catches in 4 games is not reliable at this point, at least so far this year. So I think from that standpoint, I think Fields has just a little bit of a better chance. And I also think they match up pretty well offensively to what the Raiders are going to do. And so I think in terms of playing better, I don't know if he's going to play better, but I think his performance may look better, if that makes sense, just because
Mhm.
of situation.
Yeah, I think this will be interesting for Fields, right? Because we know they played the Lions last week, and the Raiders they've been a weird team to start the year. They're 3-1. They've beaten some really good teams. They recently just lost to the Chargers. Their D line's been solid. Their corners have been surprisingly good, but they're injured now. Their offensive line's been struggling, but their Derek Carr's been great. They're kind of an enigma.
Unreal.
They're really I feel like the Raiders are kind of a wild card. We don't know which Raiders we're going to see, but I think both of these guys are going to be under immense pressure, right? Bears O line's been okay, but I feel like the Raiders D line's been really solid. Ngakwe and Crosby have been really, really, really solid. And then for the Cardinals, obviously Chandler Jones and JJ Watt against the 49ers O line is going to be rough. So I think both these guys, it could be a situation where they're both getting sacked a decent amount. Just due to that. But one thing that I think really helps Lance is that the run game should hopefully be better with him because I feel like they
True.
were running or they had a lot more designed runs for him than Fields had. And Montgomery's out for the Bears. Damien Williams is solid, but what is that going to mean for him? And then for the Niners, they've had a lot of running back issues, but Elijah Mitchell's back. Trey Sermon's in there. I don't know. I don't know. I'm interested to see who does better. I'm gonna go with Fields just because I think he's gonna have an easier time playing against the Raiders with his current offense than Lance is gonna have against a Cardinals secondary that's put up some insane numbers. Obviously, week 1 against the Titans, we saw what they did to them. We saw what they've done the last few weeks, even with the cornerback situation. I still think that front 7 is worrisome, and they have the speed to keep up with Lance as well. That's something that's super, super underrated. Is their middle linebackers are just heat-seeking missiles. So it's going to be tough for Lance to kind of burst out any big runs and kind of escape the pocket like he was doing against the Seahawks last week.
Yeah, and their run defense hasn't been good this year. I think they give up 5 yards per carry, but I actually
Mhm.
think it's a run defense built to compete with a quarterback run game because of those 2 linebackers and their ability to get sideline to sideline. I mean, Trey Lance is what, a 4.45, 4.5 guy. He's really fast. Their linebacker, Zayvon Collins, runs what, 4.5, and Isaiah Simmons runs 4.3. It's speed all over their defense. Of
Mhm.
course, Buda Baker's another heat-seeking missile. He
Yeah.
comes down and just crushes people in the run game, even though he has a small stature. So I'm 100% with you. Again, I think play better is a real difficult term to describe, but I think it might look better for Justin Fields.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on that, but you never know. Trey Lance can maybe turn it on like he did at the end of the Seahawks game where he just goes on a long drive, or maybe Debo will catch another 75-yard bomb on a busted coverage. Who's to say he won't? But that was a good question, Amin, and we'll probably take, I want to say, one more question. But yeah, so Fields, we think he'll look better against the Raiders than Lance will against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, there's a lot of good ones. We can take one more for sure. Real
mhm.
quick, my man Pinor said, "Did you expect AJ Green to have this type of season so far?" Do you want to talk AJ Green?
Yeah, sure. I thought this was a good question too. So I guess I'll say I didn't think he looked good last year either. He didn't look that great on the Bengals. But to be fair, this is kind of the first time he's actually been healthy in what seems like 3 years. Like he's had season-ending injuries, he's had lingering injuries, and I think that he was maybe a little rusty or just hadn't played in a while last year. And then it also helps too when you go from being like the guy on the outside, third option, to now being the fourth option or even fifth option in the passing game. That might have some effect on it too. But AJ Green's been consistently getting about 5 targets a game, which I think is pretty good for him at this point. And he's not someone that defenses have to really focus on at all. I mean, you have Kyler Murray, someone you have to think about, and then obviously DeAndre Hopkins too. I think he has looked a lot better and done better than I would have thought. Because I'm with you, Pinehart. He did not look that great last year, but maybe in this more reduced role, not asking much of him, I think that could be better. Maybe just being in a spread offense helps a lot as well.
Yeah, I actually did expect it. I'm a
Mm.
huge AJ Green fan, full disclosure. He's been one of my favorite players since he was drafted. And I tweeted when Arizona signed AJ Green, I thought it was a really good signing. I mean,
Mm.
him replacing Larry Fitzgerald to me as kind of the receiver that used to be like amazing, possibly Hall of Fame wide receiver. Um, was I thought a big upgrade because I thought Fitzgerald just wasn't very good. I know he's a consummate professional. He's one of the greats. He's maybe a top five receiver of all time, but Fitzgerald is slow at this point in his career. I was joking last year that Trent Williams might be faster than Larry Fitzgerald, and I mean that not in a disrespectful way. It's just a testament to the fact that the guy has lasted being so durable for so many years. Eventually, just playing football catches up with you. Uh, I really thought AJ Green would be. Blake just disappeared, so we'll just continue. I really thought AJ Green would be special this year. I tweeted out like I mentioned before, when they signed him, that I thought he could be a key contributor. I'm not too shocked, honestly. What's up, Blake? I'm not too shocked by his season so far. I am shocked by the Arizona entire weapons. Like I think Chase Edmonds and James Conner, those are the two guys that have actually really shocked me. They've been fantastic this season.
Yeah.
But AJ Green, I'm not.
Yeah. Chase Edmonds and I think James Conner's been my biggest surprise. I mean, he was like the feature back in on the Steelers for a little bit and then he just had injuries, but his new role has been just pretty much if it's anything in short and then on the goal line, they'll feed it to him. And I
He
guess
scores.
it's really effective because I mean, the last couple years, it's kind of just been goal line, just Kyler Murray, just take the ball and do something and figure it out. But now it's just give James Conner the ball, set him right up the middle, and he's been really effective at that. So I think that's been kind of an interesting storyline thus far. But yeah, I'm a little surprised Vish maybe not as an AJ Green fan, but yeah, that is that. And then Jeet, thank you for the donation. Jeet says, "What will you have to see out of Lance to say he should continue to be the starter?"
I can take this first. I don't think you really need to see anything. As long as he's able to protect himself in terms of not looking totally out of sorts on the field. And he did look totally out of sorts when he first came into the game, especially that third quarter. We've talked about it ad nauseum when we've talked about him, was very rough, but he settled himself. He showed the ability to solve problems on the field, figure out ways, adapt situationally. And so he got better as the game went on, and to me that's all he really needs to do. As long as he can show that he's able to play out there, I don't see why you need to start anybody else, because he's just going to keep getting better as he keeps playing. We saw that Seattle game in that small half in kind of a really difficult situation to even judge, because he came in the middle of the half against a division rival without really them having a full plan of how they wanted to use him and all of that, and all that confusion, tough situation to get thrown into. And he still showed the ability that he was getting better as the game went on. And to me, that's all he really needs to show. Just be comfortable on the field. So keep your poise and just be confident in the game plan and be able to just execute most of it or some of it. And then just be getting better. To me, that's all I think it really needs. He's the third overall pick.
Yeah, I'm similar with you. I think the main thing for me is I know his accuracy is not going to improve just overnight. Like that, you just know that's not going to happen. You know, there's going to be times where he should throw a little with a little more touch and not just a rocket, but that's going to improve over time. I think the one thing for me that looked chaotic when he came in was his pocket presence, and he just did not look comfortable in the pocket. And I think the only way with that is you're gonna have to be out there, and that's something that the more you're in an actual game, you'll improve at that. That's something that the more weeks you play, the more comfortable you'll get with that, and you can see that gradual improvement. So, I think that for me is kind of the main thing that just he needs to show some improvement on just throughout the game, even feeling more comfortable in the pocket, not putting his head down and running the second he feels pressure. And after that, I mean, I think all the other stuff will kind of fix itself over time or through practice and all that. So I think pocket presence for me is the key thing.
Right, comfortability in the pocket, and again, we talked about it, but that was one thing that did get better as the game went on,
Mhm.
and it just goes back to that, is he comfortable? And if he's comfortable in being able to play, I don't think there's a specific threshold where he needs to do this or he needs to do that, because at some point they just need to play him and go through it with him.
But who knows? Maybe Jimmy will come back after the bye and look great. Maybe Lance will take the reins. We have talked about this previously. If we have a video, should they continue to start Lance? Uh, Long story short, we both said yes. So if you want to see our reasoning for that, go check out that video. But thank you again for the donation. And that I think is going to be the last question we take. So thank you all again for coming out on Saturday. I know we said we're going to do Monday, Friday, then Tuesday, Friday, and now it's Tuesday, Saturday. But we're trying to do Tuesday, Friday.
Tuesday, Fridays will be back. We had a couple of things just in terms of our schedules not syncing on Fridays. Blake was traveling back from college; he was coming home, so we and a couple other Fridays. I had a couple projects, so it's been a little inconsistent like that. But we are gonna get on this Tuesday, Friday schedule.
Yep. Yep. Thank you guys. And then enjoy the 49ers Cardinals game for pretty much everyone watching, I'd imagine. And I'll be watching that too. So thank you all and have a good weekend.